All right, so in this video, I'm going to go through the solutions to the IB Economics Higher Level Paper 1. This is the 2022 October/November paper. And in a couple of previous videos, we've already gone through the solutions to questions 1 and 2. And in this video, I'm going to go through the solution to question 3, part A. And this guy is worth 10 marks. Alrighty, so this question is asking us to explain how a free trade area is different to a common market. So I like this question. It's actually pretty straightforward. All we have to do is compare a free trade area to a common market, and both are kind of like these arrangements between member states that essentially seek greater economic integration. So let's say that you're a country and I'm a country, and we both kind of like each other. We both have potentially similar sort of political views, market structures, economic goals, and so forth. And so naturally, we want to become like closer allies. How do we do this? Well, there are at least two different ways: a free trade area and a common market. Now, an FTA, or free trade area, is just kind of like an agreement between two or more member countries to reduce trade barriers between themselves, whereas a common market is kind of like a higher level of integration. It has all the same stuff as the FTA, but also includes things like free movement of factors of production, like capital and labor. So workers from my country are freely able to move to your country and get jobs with minimal restrictions, and vice versa. Okay, so the plan moving forward is to go through discuss some of the similarities and then some of the differences and explain the key concepts. As usual, we're going to start off with some key terms, then we move on to a diagram, then we explain a bit of the theory and so forth, and then we finish off with some sort of real-world example. Okay, so to begin with, let's look at regarding the key terms. There are about 5 of them which I think are relevant here, and these are obviously the free trade area, or FTA, common market, tariffs, quotas, and economic integration. So let's kick off with the first of these key terms, which is a free trade area. So what exactly is a free trade area, or an FTA? An agreement between 2 or more countries to reduce or eliminate tariffs, quotas, and other trade barriers on goods and services traded among member countries. However, each member maintains its own external trade policies toward non-member countries. Toward non-member countries, sure. Then we've got this thing called a common market, which is a higher level of economic integration than an FTA, where member countries not only eliminate trade barriers among themselves, but also adopt a common external tariff toward non-members. Additionally, a common market allows for the free movement of factors of production, namely labor, capital, goods and services among member countries. Next up, we have this thing called a tariff, which is essentially a tax. A tax imposed on imported goods. Then we've got a quota, which is a limit on the quantity of a good that can be imported or exported. And finally, we've got this idea of economic integration, which I think we should probably define, which is the process whereby countries coordinate or combine their economic policies to achieve shared objectives, ranging from trade agreements to full economic unions. Alrighty, so I think that's going to do us in terms of the key terms. These are, I think, important things that's going to set up the solution later on. All right, so next we're going to move on to the diagram. Right, so here I've already got a diagram which I've done earlier. Now, instead of our usual kind of supply and demand type diagrams, I've just gone ahead with a simple Venn diagram, as I think this is the most useful diagram for this particular problem. So nothing terribly technical or potentially confusing. Now, not sure if you know what a Venn diagram is, but it's pretty straightforward. You've got two circles with an overlapping bit in the middle. The overlapping bit shows the features that both circles have in common. On the left side, we have a free trade area depicted by the FTA abbreviation, and on the right, we have a common market. Now, in terms of the common features, which is the overlapping bit, both have no tariffs or quotas between members. And in terms of the differences, the free trade area has independent external trade policies, while the common market has a common external tariff, which are levied against non-members. There is also free movement of labor and capital and harmonization of certain policies. But I'll explain all this in more detail as we move to the next bit. So the main difference here is that within FTA, each member nation is still allowed to maintain their own external trade policy, whereas in a common market, there's this common external tariff. So if, let's say, if we're in an FTA, your country and my country are in an FTA, well, you can still decide how you want to conduct your external trade policy with your other party, with your other partners. So you can have tariffs, or you can have not tariffs, and I'll have my own set of trade policies as well. Whereas if we're in a common market, then we both agree to a set of external tariffs that we're going to jointly impose on our external trade partners. So that's, I guess, one of the major differences between a common market and an FTA. All right, so on to the next bit. So we're going to have a bit of theory and explanation in terms of to discuss some of the key differences between an FTA and a common market. So the first thing I'm going to discuss is going to be on trade policy to non-members. In a free trade area, member countries can negotiate their own trade policies with non-members, which means tariffs and trade rules differ by country. In a common market, member countries adopt a uniform policy toward non-members through a common external tariff. Now, in terms of the movement of factors of production, things like labor and capital, in a free trade area, there is no explicit arrangement to allow the free movement of labor and capital. In a common market, there is full freedom of movement for labor and capital, enabling workers and businesses to relocate and invest across member countries without restrictions. And lastly, in terms of the level of integration, a free trade area is a lower level of economic integration focused mainly on trade in goods and services. The common market represents a deeper level of integration, facilitating not just trade, but also economic interdependence through the mobility of factors of production. As mentioned before, so a common market is kind of like a higher level of, kind of like friendship and cooperation than, say, an FTA. The distinction between a free trade area and a common market is essential in understanding the varying levels of economic integration. While FTAs promote trade efficiency by reducing barriers, common markets aim for deeper economic collaboration by integrating labor and capital markets, fostering economic interdependence, and reducing transaction costs. Good. So I think that about will do it for the theory and explanation. Okay, and so lastly, we're going to finish off with some real-world examples. So in terms of examples, I can think of a couple, these being the North American Free Trade Agreement, commonly referred to as NAFTA, and the European Union, commonly referred to as the EU. So for the free trade area, North American Free Trade Agreement, Canada, Mexico, and the United States eliminated tariffs on most goods traded between them, but each country maintained independent trade policies toward non-members. So that's an example of a free trade agreement, which is the arrangement between Canada, Mexico, and the US. Now, in terms of common market, we've got places like the EU, European Union, common market pre-1993. Member states eliminated tariffs among themselves, adopted a common external tariff, and allowed the free movement of workers, goods, services, and capital. Yeah, and there you have it. So, yeah, as I said, I kind of like this question, short and sweet. All we have to do is just talk about the difference between free trade agreement, a free trade area, and common market, and kind of discuss those differences and elaborate a little bit with examples and some explanation. So we can see here we started off with some key terms, and then we moved on to a little bit of a diagram where we talk about some of the commonalities between an FTA and a common market, and some of the differences. Down here, we sort of further elaborated on those differences and commonalities, and we finished it off with some real world examples. Okay, that's about it. I'll see you guys in the next one.